Good morning, Africa. This is Wake Up Africa, and we are delighted and honored to have you with us this morning. It's been a fantastic day, and so much ahead of us. It's just great. We're grateful for this wonderful day. And welcome to Wake Up Africa Live 2025, Saturday, the 14th of June. Well, the year is running at a speed of light. Grateful, and I would like to start by saying sorry and apologies for starting Wake Up Africa a bit late today. It's been a night of travel, and when I saw the message from one of the greatest fans this morning, like, what's happening to Wake Up Africa today? I said, I did not know what it really means to be jet lagged up until this morning. This is when I had the alarm ringing, but the body was just not moving, and by the time now the body was responsive, it was a couple of minutes before the time to start Wake Up Africa. But well, come rainfall, come sunshine, we have Wake Up Africa. This is the motto, this is the drive, this is the motive. If we cannot change the narrative of Africa, then who will change the narrative of Africa? Today, my dear viewer of Wake Up Africa, from all over Africa and beyond, we're looking onto the ease of doing business in Africa. The last index that was produced is 2024, and we're going to go through that. But why are we discussing the ease of doing business in Africa? Most people come to most of our African economies either to invest or amongst, fellow Africans who want to invest in their own countries, diaspora wanting to come and invest back. How easy or how difficult it is to invest in Africa. So Wake Up Africa today is dedicated to look onto the ease of doing business in Africa. I am honored and delighted to once again thank all my contributors from all over Africa, mentioning Alan Subi from Uganda, Aminata Traore from Arusha, Tanzania. She said she would be a silent partner and listener today. I have my dear Noreen from United States. She's Tanzanian, but she's currently residing in the United States. We look forward to your contribution today. Sandeka Pesi, Tanzanian residing in Kenya, doing some studies. We look forward to your contribution today. Then Remy from Rwanda. Thank you so much, and looking forward to your contributions today. Elliot from Burundi, thank you, and we look forward to your contribution today. Not to forget to mention my dear Patricia Ndere from Kenya. It's a long week for you, as the entire fraternity of public relations, except for Austin Makani, the host of Wake Up Africa, they're all gathered in Mombasa for an annual meeting. Thank you so much if you will make time today to contribute to how easy it is or how difficult it is to doing business in Kenya. Would be great. So this is Wake Up Africa, Saturday, the 14th of June, 2025, the ease of doing business in Africa. So, my dear viewer, on a little gathered research during the time and engagement with people, and of course, East Africa Business Council is going to do quite a massive engagement on this topic. The overall ease of doing business in Africa, we all know, countries to countries vary. The levels of development in Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Mauritius, Nigeria, Morocco, Egypt, Tanzania, the levels of development in these countries differ. Now, with these differences, Malawi, Mozambique, Togo, Djibouti, etc., we'll go to those. Sudan, South Sudan, beautiful countries, DR Congo, etc. Now, because of the variations of development in these countries, that brings the differences in the ease of doing business in these countries. Now, with some regions and countries showing improvement while others face challenges. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to engage one-on-one with Dr. Donald Murray, the country director, the managing director of research organization, one of the think tanks of Tanzania called RIPOA. We're looking into poverty evidence, poverty reduction in Africa. And I asked, in the world, of course, but The meeting was happening here in Tanzania. And I asked him, Professor, why do you think Africa, being the youngest continent in the world, is the poorest continent in the world? Is it anything to do with the age? Then he told me two factors, which I would like to now share. The first one, which he spoke of, governance. I said, governance. Without hesitation, he said, Austin, governance. I was like, please explain. Then he said, we have countries that have very strong governance. And he gave an example of Namibia, whereby the port, in the past, the port used to provide lots of employment. Then there are leaders who are now behind bars who invited an investor from Germany. And this investor sort of like bought the ministers to take everyone out except for them to allow them to do business there. Now, when the president or the heads of state or the government now realized what has happened, they decided to take everyone out to allow the previous management of the port and the sea and the fisheries, etc., Ministry of Fisheries. And as I said, the ministers are now behind bar. So the governance is now when the powers, the authorities allow stuff like that. Where do you think you'll get the development? Where do you think you will eliminate poverty? He went further, saying that even some of the people, because of, that mishap, had to commit suicide because either they're in debt or something, they couldn't pay the debt, they couldn't support the families anymore. Now that you bring new investor, etc., etc. Now, governance. The East African Community EAC, for instance, experienced a decline in the ease of doing business with an average of 3.22 on a scale where 1 is very easy and 5 is very hard. So the EAC is on the decline. However, some individual countries like Djibouti, as I mentioned, Morocco and Sudan have improved their scores, while others like Kenya have shown progress. Macroeconomic factors such as fiscal balance and inflation play a significant role in the overall ease of doing business environment. This is what we're going to ponder on today, the ease of doing business. So the key aspects and regional differences are attributed to, as I mentioned, the East African community. Now, I did say that East Africa Business Council has reported a decline in the ease of doing business across all 8 indicators in 2024 compared to 2023, with an average of 3.22. A report and a discussion which will soon be happening in the region. SADC, this is the EAC. Now, on the side of the SADC, the Southern African Development Community and Middle East and Northern Africa, if you compare now the two RECs or the two blocks, the EAC has a better average rank than the SADC when it comes to starting a business, but all the 3 regions, EAC, SADC, and MENA, which is Middle East and Northern Africa, have an average scores in the range of 79.82 to 82, indicating they face relatively attractive investment destinations. And of course, looking on to Africa, when the other time we spoke about how Africa is endowed with natural resources, with capital, etc. It's human capital, etc., etc. And how that attracts or has continued to attract investors to come and invest in Africa. This is why. This is basically why. But now, what does the World Bank Be Ready says? The report says the World Bank Business Ready 2024 report evaluates the business and investment climate worldwide, offering insights into the conditions in African nations. The Be Ready report, the Business Ready report, which is published annually by the World Bank, also speaks about insights into the condition. We'll go on to this report slightly later on. But again, I cannot be over proud to represent, and when the rest of the countries come in, I will ask them to speak about their countries as well. But picking from Tanzania, Tanzania's rank in the ease of doing business was 141 among 190 economies, according to this World Bank's report. Here at home, 141 among 190 economies. Well, we're improving because we used to be in 160. We've come down to 141. We're going there. We're growing. Kudos to the government. But again, general trends are showing that some African countries are making progress in areas like trading across borders, getting electricity. We had Mission 300 earlier this year, looking onto how the African countries committed to bringing electricity to millions or to 300 million Africans by the third year. Now, resolving insolvency, accessing credit, starting a business, and paying taxes. However, there are still, of course, we agree, discrepancies here and there between countries and regions. You know, the countries which have very strong economies, but they have serious energy issues, electricity issues, etc., etc. Now, these are now making it difficult for investments, for FDIs to be attracted into their countries. Now, what are the factors that influence the ease of doing business in Africa? As I said, number one, giving an example of Namibia and the rest of African countries, is governance. Stronger property rights, governance will come now. Governance is when the country's leadership and management truly attract passionately investors to come into the respective countries to invest. Good morning, Noreen. I do not know. It's good night. It's after midnight your end, but good to have an economist on the program. I will be with you shortly to give us your ideas, your thoughts. You've spent quite a number of time in USA. Now you'll be able to tell us business environment and comparison to what USA does and what Africa does, and what should we or what lessons should we draw from doing the ease of doing business in the USA and the ease of doing business in Africa. You'll share your insights with us as soon as I finish the factors that influence the ease of doing business in Africa. I've started with, so you want to say good morning back or good night?
It's a good night, Austin. Thank you.
We'll be with you shortly. But factors that influence the ease of doing business include regulatory framework. I did mention governance, management, but regulatory framework, whereby fiscal balance and inflation are key indicators of macroeconomic stability, which can significantly impact trading conditions. Now, when you speak of macroeconomic stability, the fiscal balance and inflations, people look onto these indexes before they decide which country they want to invest in. And this is why it is critical that they speak, they communicate. Now, when people look onto the regulatory environment, the investors look onto that. They're like, okay, let's go there because it attracts, because it's easy to do business in that country. But macroeconomic stability vis-a-vis the fluctuations in economics, the fiscal balance and inflations are key indicators of macroeconomic stability. Inflation, what is your rate of inflation? But again, it's not about the rate of inflation. How regular does it move up and down? These are key indicators of macroeconomic stability, which can significantly impact trading conditions. But again, we look onto the shock exposures and vulnerability, assessing and addressing economic, trade, and investment vulnerabilities is crucial for building resilience. So, how do countries respond to aspects of economy, aspects of trade, aspects of investment when during shocks, you know? Business cycle, there are times when you're up, that's boom, there's times when you're down, that's depression. How do countries react? How do they, address those challenges? But again, the issue of infrastructure, and once again, being in Tanzania, giving this program live all the way from Tanzania, I'm happy to say that we have, by far and large, done very well, very better when it comes to infrastructure. Visiting Addis during the week and looking forward to going to Addis again next week. Again, I've also seen the efforts that the government is putting towards infrastructure. Rwanda, I love this country. When it comes to infrastructures, the road networks is just amazing. But again, we'll have colleagues join us and tell us the aspects of infrastructure. But trade facilitation, which is another very key factor, The efficient cross-border trade procedures and are essentials for attracting investment and promoting economic growth. Noreen,
Yes, hello, Austin.
Wake Up Africa is now ready to get your insights onto the ease of doing business in Africa. You being in the United States of America at the moment, you've had how many months now of stay?
Um, is it 5, 6, I think?
So it's almost half a year since you've been in the USA, and I'm sure being an economist yourself, you've been comparing notes. So what lessons should we draw from USA in terms of the ease of doing business, looking on to, for instance, inflation or infrastructure or economy, trade and investments, or basically fiscal balance or inflation? What are your takes? What are the lessons that Africa should draw from United States of America?
One thing that I have picked is the regulatory systems in all this in the business. The regulatory systems are quite structured, they're quite efficient, there are no corners to it. So in case you want to do business, you want to register a business, you want to do whatever it is within the business grounds, it is because you know the process. It is what's written. What's on the theory is what you'll practice.
Uh-huh. So
Yes.
that is in the aspect of regulatory environment. But we
Yes.
have seen recently over the Trump administration how powerful one person, one individual could be the president. You know, the moment he was sworn into, the moment he took the office, there are quite a number of bills he signed. Now, are those positively or negatively impacting investments in the USA? Including the fluctuation in taxes. We remember the war in tax between the USA and China. What is your take on that?
Negatively, we have had the senates from different areas. They've been complaining. We have had owners of different industries complaining. They change the tariffs right now. We have had riots, so the negative impact is being felt right now. It's it's crazy. I'm trying to look for a good word to use right now, but it's crazy. It's impacting on the prices, but here's the good thing: it still does not affect the regulatory processes of doing business. I don't know if I'm making this clear.
Mhm.
Yes. Despite that some areas are being affected, but it does not change. These processes have been there. They're very well structured. It's still the same. It is. But what happens is that you will feel the pinch on the pricing.
Right. I agree with you, Noreen. But when you spoke of riots, you know, we saw the other day when people were throwing stones to police vehicles.
Mhm.
How does that impact the business environment attractiveness when investor looks onto the riots, when they see now if the government is not strong enough to defend its own internal policies, would that still attract investors to come in? We look onto how
Not
many
if,
businesses have been impacted by the tax regime that is has just been sort of like dictated by the head of state.
oh, the numbers are large. The numbers are large. Yes. We are having now the rights are just not the because at first they were all about ICE with the whole immigration and all this, but then it has impacted the industries because there's no labor, so production is also low. Um, so and now also include so you have two things: you have labor, you have taxes. You have no labor, high tax.
Hmm.
Yes, so we have also the millionaires in the countries are coming in and they have to speak that something has to be done. Like, can we go back to the books and see how this can be settled?
And how is that coming?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. So far, not good because we're not getting a response yet.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
you spoke about regulatory framework in the USA being very strong, and hence it attracts, or it makes it very easy for investors to come in and invest. What are some other lessons, or yeah, what are some other lessons that Africa could draw from USA? When I'm comparing Africa and the United States, and comparing Tanzania, for instance, and the
Mm,
USA as a
mm,
country. I'm looking on to 60 plus years of independence vis-a-vis over 270 years, if I'm not mistaken, of independence between the two countries. So lots has transpired between the independence of the countries. But are there any lessons, Noreen, that you would substantiately mention as best examples that Africa can emanate from the United States of America?
Um, okay, so two things that I've seen in the business world here. One, it's the labor structure, I think. I don't know how if that's the correct word for it. It's how labor works in this. The hourly payment of labor works, it increases production. Yeah, so there's high production, but on that as well, there's quality. So the quality of products increases consumption. You know, we have products that are supposed to be we're supposed to have products from Africa come here, but it's not easy. It's easier for products from here to go to Africa because of the quality of the product. We are producing goods that are of not the best quality for export, yeah? We have very good products that would be performing very well, but we go back to the regulatory systems. The two R's on the word are becoming a bit, they're giving me a tongue twist.
Hands
Yeah,
up.
regulatory, yes. The regulatory systems, regulatory systems are not really helping uh, to have our products reach the quality that is good for export. So it is becoming hard for African countries to do business in this country. But this country is doing a large percent of the business in Africa. That's the biggest market. Yeah, we have a Unilever industry here, you know. Apparently they had to open another one in Dubai so that it can cater for the African market. That's how large it is. That it was not the industries here were not enough. They had to branch out. So that's just an example of many, many other industries, and there's a lot that we need to learn. To sit down as business with business owners, to sit down with the government systems, to know where are we failing and how we can improve. Maybe even visit these places. Maybe physically seeing this, getting the exposure would actually help.
Thank you so much, Noreen. I'm looking onto the African continent, Mama Africa, where I politely like to remind you where you belong. And looking
Home
on
is first.
Yeah, home is best always. Looking on to now the first factor that I did mention earlier on, the governance. Does it make sense? And this is the question I asked Dr. Donald Murray of Rapport yesterday while we were doing an international conference on poverty eradication, re-energizing towards 2030, towards goal one, which is no poverty. SDG goal number one, no poverty. I asked him why is it that still Africa being the youngest continent, why do we still struggle? Is it anything to do with us young people? Then he said governance. One of the factors, he gave me two reasons, but number one, he said governance. What is your take on to the contribution of African governance in attracting or repelling investments in their respective countries?
One, we have, I would say, a very dynamic governing system. That means it changes, keeps changing. Um, we do not have policies in place that we know can actually go to, let's say, we don't have, they can actually cater for even 10 years, I would say, because every time we change the presidents, we change policies, we change everything. So I think that dynamism of the government is weakening our our business sector because it gives a sense of uncertainty. You're not certain whenever you're doing your plan, you have to plan for 5 years. But in actual sense, when we're talking about a business plan, it should not be just 5 years. It should be more than that. The projections have to go to 10 and above, above years, but you cannot do that because of the uncertainty. And the certainty comes from the dynamism of the government, the dynamism of the policies set by the government.
Fantastic. Now I'm looking on to other than governance, Noreen, even the countries that have had are doing very well. When you speak of the ease of doing business, you're talking about the range of 1 to 190, yeah? One being the very best, so the first place, very best, and 190 being the worst. Okay. So most countries like Tanzania, we used to be in the 160s, we're now in the 140s from 190. Um,
Yes.
Other than governance, which has, of course, contributed largely either to attract or to repel investors, we're looking onto the policies within the countries to attract or repel investors. I'm looking onto other factors, Noreen. I'm looking onto Africa and its potential to attract investments, but we are not there yet. And I'll give you two quick factors. Number one, raw materials. Number two, labor. You know, labor, of course, is doubtful because yes, we have many young people, but they probably lack the know-how skills. But we have such a good number. We're the youngest continent in Africa. How do you then bring to the surface, resurface the fact that we have raw materials in Africa that are globally needed and the youngest population, which could provide the best human capital required for any industries, but yet we are not what we are as the continent. What do you think could be the reasons? You're an economist, so
Infrastructure.
these are stuff on your fingertips. And
Infrastructure. It's one word, infrastructure.
bring it on.
Yes, and here's it means lack of infrastructure. We don't have the the proper or the sufficient infrastructure that is necessary to produce what's needed by the market. It brings us back to low quality production. We cannot cater enough. It's not the infrastructure that's producing quality products cannot meet the market demand. We do have a few industries. Speaking of Africa as a continent, we have countries that are really performing well in the industrial sector. but it's still not meeting the market demand. Yeah, so infrastructure.
Speaking about market demands, Maureen, you initially spoke of a company like Unilever, where
Yes.
they produce from soaps, toothpaste, etc., and many more.
Milk,
That
Austin, milk. We're taking milk from from
Yeah,
Unilever.
yeah, plus milk, powdered milk, etc. You spoke about the fact that this company was established to market products in Africa.
Yes.
If I had that right, and I'm mesmerized by that fact, considering what you've just said. Market. Africa is one of the largest markets in the world. So, what it is that you mean when you speak about infrastructure and markets, you're not producing what is needed in the market. What lesson should we draw from that? What do you think should be the solution to that?
We need to sit down instead of advocating for more imports. We should advocate more for improvement of our own infrastructure, which means also advocating for investors to invest within our countries. For me, it still does not make sense that the products are produced in UAE to be sold to African countries, produced in China to be sold in the African market. We need to have these investments within our countries, and in the long run, we all know all these companies usually end up they end up what do you say, profiting the local community, you know. We do not have the sufficient funds to do these investments, but why not draw in the investors?
Right. Now, let's go back to the aspect of governance, but on this aspect, let's look onto the stability vis-a-vis instability of the respective government when it comes to political stability. You spoke about how African countries' management move after a certain period of time, but I like the fact that you brought into the vision that the country should have long-term vision despite of the changes in management, but they should have long-term vision. Tanzania is doing Vision 2050. Africa is doing Vision 2063. What is your take on that? Do you think this is your personal opinion because it's a very difficult topic to bring into mind. Do you really think that we can discuss 2063 today? Do you really think we can discuss 2050 today while we do not even have a vision for the next 5 years? I'll ask you why before you respond to that. 10 years ago, Noreen, 10 or let's say 15 years ago, we never used to have flash disks.
Yes.
So people would, use the overhead projectors with the number of slides to project their presentations, etc. 10, 15 years ago. Now we have flash disks. As little as, this, you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
I think I have one right here.
You have one right
This,
here, and
yes.
that could still be very big. You
Yeah.
see? Or you could have
Mhm.
something as small as that can store up to 3 terabyte of data, information, presentation, etc. Where do
Yes.
you think the world is going 10 years today? Now, why am
We're
I
going
asking you
to
that is because when we do Vision 2063, I'm lucky that I'll still be alive to see that come to effect. But do you think Africa needs that lengthy of time to really realize economic development, economic growth in the continent?
um no, well, we need to work first. Before we go on to that, you were speaking of a flash disk. That means we're talking about technological development,
That's
you know.
correct. That is what is
Um,
driving the economies in the world, right?
that is what is driving the economies of the world. But where are we as a continent right now on the technological levels? You know, we are still dependent on what's being brought to us technologically. One country has actually been able to make their own cars now. Yes, from your friend Torre. Yeah. They're making their own cars. That's the advancement that we need. We're waiting to be spoon-fed to know our direction. That means if the other economies decide anything different, we are messed. We're messed up, we don't have our own sense of direction. So before we go analyzing the economies, the everything, we need to start with the what is moving the world right now. It's tech. Where are we technologically? Okay, we can't be planning for 2063 while we don't know how the next 5 years are in the tech world. Will we still be using cash, or we're going to be using Bitcoins? You can't be telling me we have a budget of a certain amount that is it's in shillings, it's in dollars. What if it will be in Bitcoins? These are
Right.
things, these are the analytics that we have to go through.
Right. So, lessons learned. Noreen, you're speaking of 5 years, you're speaking of Bitcoins. We have already moved on to a cashless economies in Africa. I always
Mhm.
mesmerize how Uganda, not Uganda, how Rwanda, as simple as, you know, getting into a restaurant where you need to pay, you've got to use an application to pay.
Mm.
But I hope it gets to Tanzania to that level very soon. Countries like Kenya, in a commuter buses, you
Yes.
pay, you do not pay cash anymore. Cashless
Mm.
economy. So I'm
Yes.
mesmerized how the levels of development in Africa have advanced that fast. The fintech, this is your field, but you've not mentioned. I'm sure you'll come back to that. Now,
Mhm.
my question back to you, Noreen. Market, population, which is the youngest population. I'm talking about um, raw materials in Africa, but we are not. You see, we are not there yet. We are not. We are not in the top 10, for instance. We're not in the top 50. I will look onto this list and share it shortly. But Africa is struggling onto the ease of doing business ranks economies in the world now, having everything that we have, having the stability in terms of the political stability. In Africa, out of the 55 African countries, you can mention one or two or three, and they're not countries, districts or regions or parts or villages where there are wars, there are instabilities in those little parts. But generally, Africa is a peaceful country. What is it that Africa needs really to draw from an economic point of view? What is it that we need to do to put our feet down and really build Africa's economy? As an economist, what's your take on that?
Ah, I always say we need to go back on the drawing board. That's one. And wipe out everything that we have right now that we is from the colonial era. We still have the neocolonialism functioning. We need to remove all that and come up with a modern African ways of business trading, creating our own rules to what we produce, creating our own rules to what we are taking to the world. We need to take our power back. We don't have to be controlled by tariffs of another country. We should also dictate our own tariffs.
Mhm.
Yes, that's my
Interesting.
very personal, strong opinion.
I would like to share with you and Wake Up Africa and the African continent following Wake Up Africa this morning, the 10 top countries whose environment is very conducive to doing business. Number one, can you guess which is number one?
Is it Morocco or Mauritius? It's a country with an M, I'm thinking. It's either Mauritius or Morocco. I've seen it somewhere.
So I said Africa is not within the top 10. So it's not Morocco, it's not Mauritius. It's Singapore.
Oh, you're talking about continents. Oh, it's
Yeah,
on the world or in Africa?
worldwide, yeah, worldwide.
Oh,
And then
worldwide. Okay.
I'll come back to Africa.
Okay.
So Singapore, Noreen, if you may recall, and history has it and books have it that was once, when we gained our independence, at the same level of GDP GDP with Tanzania. But again, globally now, Singapore is number one in the ease of doing business. It's very easy to attract so many investors. The environment is just very conducive. Number two globally is Hong Kong.
Quite expected.
Number three, New Zealand. And you're living at the moment on the fourth country, USA.
Yes.
Number five is Denmark. Then we have Malaysia. Every time I mention Malaysia, I think the CNN effect, I hear the sound truly Asia. Then
Oh,
South
yes.
Korea, Georgia. Are you in Georgia?
No,
You're
no.
not. Then we have Norway. And
Is
the tenth is
Georgia a country or is it a state?
it's a country.
Oh,
Yeah. And then we have United Kingdom. This is now the global index. I'm mesmerized that the top place is Singapore. And when we narrow it down, when we bring it down, you had rightly mentioned that the first country is Mauritius, back in Africa. Mauritius. The second
yes.
country is Rwanda. Now, before I move on to the rest of the countries, I want to ask you, why do you think Mauritius, Rwanda, doing very well in businesses? Is it because of their manageability, the fact that it's fewer people in those countries compared to Tanzania, which goes to almost 70 million people now?
It's the governing systems.
Governance system,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Number three is Morocco. Guess what is number four?
Nigeria?
Kenya.
Oh, but they have a very high GDP, I'm guessing, right?
Kenya is actually ahead of South Africa. And to tell you, Nigeria is not on the top 10 list.
Okay.
Yeah, so after number five is South Africa, number six is Tunisia. I can't wait to visit Tunisia.
When are you in Tunisia?
I do not know yet. I need to go to this week, beginning of this week, Norina was in Ethiopia. I'm going again this Wednesday back to Ethiopia, and I learned that Burundi is not doing very well economically. Burundi is not even in the countries that can access loans and grants globally. Now, I want to go and just be there for a couple of days, and of course, responding to invitation once again from my brother Elliot and another friend of mine in Burundi who've continued to invite me to visit the country to just be there, learn a few things, and see. I do not know why something is telling me to go to Burundi, so I look forward to going to Burundi sometimes this year, and then I'll be going to Madagascar. I look forward to going visiting Madagascar again this year, but this is for real
Say
estate. We
hi to
spoke
King
about this.
Julian for me when you're there.
If it's still there, I'm sure it's probably the second or the third now, but yeah, we'll do.
Mhm.
Then after Tunisia is Egypt,
Quite expected.
Botswana,
That's new.
and in fact, when I was speaking to Dr. Donald Murray of Repoa yesterday, he spoke of Botswana and how, they put their feet down to investors who came into the mining sector. So from the word go, they stood firmly saying, when you come to Botswana and you want to do mining activities, it's 50-50. If you recall, one of the contracts that I think I stand to be corrected, but I think it resurfaced in Tanzania, we were probably getting 3% of, is it from I don't know, from the mining deals, the contracts that we signed. Now, a country like Botswana said from the onset that, you come here to do your mining activities, welcome to Botswana, but we have to agree that this is going to go 50-50 and not any other way, which is super great, right?
Yeah.
I was looking to YouTube universities in Africa, and I learned that universities in Botswana, students go to universities for free, and they're actually paid, not as students' loans. They are paid to go to universities by the governments.
And
And then
okay,
number
I'm
nine
thinking
is
what.
Algeria. Go ahead.
Yes. So what is the main the what runs the economy of Botswana?
So good question you've asked. So before I respond directly to your question, Noreen, before I respond directly to your question, I want to highlight the think tank's mentality and thinking. This is what my engagement with Dr. Donald Murray yesterday, that it said countries in Africa that are oil producing countries, which some of them even are members of OPEC, are probably among the poorest countries in the world. You see, look onto you mentioned earlier on UAE. Okay. UAE does not have anything. What do we find as natural endowment in the likes of Dubai, for instance, Qatar? What can we find in these countries, Noreen? Okay, compared to rich African countries. Now, he highlighted that governance, when you have a country, and you know what he said? He said, we are doing the vision mapping for the countries, for the continent, right? Do you know who is behind Vision 2063 of the African Union? Who is
UAE.
funding? Who is funding
I
visions
wouldn't be
of African
surprised
states?
if it's UAE. I wouldn't be surprised.
Who is funding vision statements for the countries? So he spoke passionately about. No, I can't remember because I was back to back with Professor Samuel Wangwe and Dr. Donald Murray. But one of them substantially said, when you have, for instance, the World Bank come to support your vision for the country, they'll of course tell you their terms. Okay. And when they put terms in place, this is where now it becomes challenging and difficult for you to have ownership of the vision that you have as the continent, as the country. You see, now there are countries, he mentioned a few, that refused to buy onto the terms to putting visions, and they've actually been doing very well. Some of these countries that I've mentioned on the list, the top 10 list: Mauritius, Rwanda, Morocco, Kenya, South Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, Botswana, Algeria, and the 10th country that I had not mentioned, Ghana. And the factor that you've asked, but they speak about streamlined regulations and procedures for starting and operating businesses in these countries. The procedures are just straightforward. If you recall, and I'm happy that Alan Subi has joined us. Good morning, Alan, and welcome to Wake Up Africa.
Good morning, Austin. Happy to be here as always.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Alan, for being here, for setting time for Africa. I started the program started a bit late today, jet lagged, but I said if I do not wake up to go and do this program, then who will do this program? If I do not wake up, then Alan Subi will not be on the program to contribute. Then Noreen, who has been with me from the beginning of the program, will not be able to contribute to. And from the beginning, we've been comparing how, from where she sits at the moment in the USA, easy it is to do business in the USA, and what are the lessons as African continent we can borrow so that we continue to attract. Because on the top 10 list of the world, none of the African countries is there, but Singapore, which initially when they gained their independence, equal time with most African states, is ranking number one in the world in the ease of doing business. What is your take when it comes to Uganda to begin?
Austin, the other day I was driving out of home, and my askari comes to my window and says, "Madam, next time you have guests, I can make for them chapati. I can also make cupcakes. And what else?" It was snacks and pastries. He was offering to make them for me. But then he opens up to me because I had also engaged him on revamping my house flowers. I have flowers on my balconies, so he had done a good job with them. So I said, then he's like, there's something else that I can do. Why am I telling you this story? I'm showing you how easy it is to do business here in Uganda and in Africa. You just have to be handy and to be crafty and to be thoughtful, because it is so easy to start and to run a business here. You do not need to be certified. You do not need to have business premises or whatever. You just have to think of an idea, think of execution, and get on the market, get the product and service on the market. Now, that's something that we need to now, the scalability of it is something that we need to be discussing, because as Africa, because it's easy for us to do business, so many businesses have then remained in the briefcase. My askari will continue doing his business for as long as I have visitors at home and I engage him to do pastries, and it will stay that way. He'll never think about professionalizing it, scaling it up, doing marketing for it, So because it's so easy, we are taking it for granted, and we have remained this way for years because of that. So many businesses are not certified, despite the fact that we have URSB, the Registration Bureau. Because we as the customers are finding it easy to deal with small businesses and to squeeze them when it comes to negotiations, then businesses stay that way and they cannot bid for big business. They cannot, they're not paying taxes. They're not going to get funding. They stay that way, and that's why we're lagging behind. When you look at Singapore, it's doing well because all these businesses are scaled up. They have corporate governance. They are paying they're paying social security for their staff. Things are professionalized, and that's where Africa needs to catch up on. Yes, Austin.
Thank you so much, Alan. Truly pertinent as always. Now, looking onto the list, and I would really want you to come in again. I had a lengthy discussion, delighted with Noreen earlier on. We spoke about regulatory framework, and this is what ranks Mauritius as number one. They have very strong regulatory framework, legal and regulatory framework. When you speak of Rwanda, Rwanda, it takes, I think, if I remember very well, if it's not 1 hour, 3 hours, but not more than 24 hours, your business is registered, you have your business license, you're good to go. You can even open a bank account within, a couple of hours in Rwanda. When it comes to Morocco has, is attracting a lot of foreign direct investments because of the economic reforms that the country has had. When you look onto Kenya, Alex, will be you and me, you particularly being a techno savvy, Kenya is a regional hub for technology and innovation, we all know. And with the growing startup ecosystem in Kenya, it has it has a very well developed infrastructure for technology and innovation. So many people now, being now the world going digital, Africa is also catching up very fast with digital economy. Kenya has been able to capture and seize that. South Africa, we all know, is probably, I wouldn't call it the oldest economy, but well-established economy and infrastructure. And people look onto South Africa whenever they think of the first country to come and invest. Now, looking onto the very reason that you've just mentioned, business registration. Most businesses are not registered, you said, in Uganda. Now, does that make it easier to attract businesses? Do we need to have informal settings when it comes to the ease of doing business, or formalization of businesses will continue to see economies grow? Please give me a take on that.
Austin, we're dealing with a misconception in Africa. I know the case in point is Uganda, but I'm speaking for Africa as a whole. People, especially the the semi-educated or the uneducated, think that business registration is going to attract taxes or unnecessary attention from government. So they would rather do their under the bed businesses, briefcase businesses, and not attract too much attention. They want to keep doing business in hiding, and you can't blame them so much. We have seen we have seen taxes choke businesses out of existence, haven't we? So for fear of being taxed out of business, then they shun away from registration and from all forms of formality that would have otherwise scaled up their businesses for their profit, for their benefit. So that's something that we need to work on, especially from the government view. We just had this week. We just had our budget reading, and I read a review that was talking to the effect that 20 years ago, when there was a budget reading, there was room to talk about consumer goods. This is the price of salt. This is the price of sugar. The price of cooking oil is going down. The price of rice is going up. We are importing this. We are exporting that. Right now, it has changed to from the consumer level to a level where we're discussing digital transformation and incorporating it in the different sectors and whatnot, which is a good thing, but it further alienates the common man, the businessman from the conversation. So you'll find that people, downtown, there's a place we call Chikuo. I'm sure even Dar has a similar place downtown where a lot of business is concentrating, but they are switched off when it comes to things as important as the budget reading because they don't feel like they're being represented. What does that result into? They are not registering their businesses. They are running away from URA. They are not able to get big government business. They won't bid for it. So, we are then year in, year out. And I don't know if government also realizes that this is the reason why our revenue collection is low, because businesses are not formalized, they're running away. And in the long run, much as it's impacting their profitability, it's also impacting government revenue. So what am I saying? These entities need to work hand in hand for the benefit of the country, for the betterment of our financial standing. We've talked about these things before. We are reading the budget. More than 50% of the budget is being funded, hopefully, by foreign aid. We are looking for foreign aid to fund the business when we have businesses in-house that could potentially help to fund the budget. But they're not even known on the URA portal because we are lacking that sort of formality. And to close us off with this question, Austin, and I'm not saying all is terrible. The government is putting provisions in place. I'm sorry, I keep clearing my voice. I've had a cold in the week. The government is bettering its stand, but so much more needs to be done. We need to get down to the grassroots. We need to go downtown and register businesses by showing them the benefits of registration. We need to rethink our taxing. We need to rethink it, because right now it's depressing the common businessman. You know, the common businessman is having to face triple taxation. It's not even double anymore. You know, you're being tasked on all fronts of the chain. So, you know, with people having the notion that the government is not for them, then they're running away and they're not formalizing business, and it's putting us in a very compromising situation. Thank you, Austin.
Absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much. It surely does. And it's truly challenging, not only for Uganda. And I'm happy that you said, Africa case of Uganda. It's something that we also experience here in Tanzania. Noreen, allow me to come to you now to ask you one very simple question. When it comes to the ease of doing business in Africa, we have the financial institutions, and probably Alan Subi can also contribute to this after Noreen. We have the financial institutions, and there are very stringent policies and procedures to actually giving facilities to businesses. Is this now an hindrance? Is this now a protectionism mechanism to really, we have money in the bank, but we can't give you because you do not have a collateral. We have money in the bank, but we can't give you because you've not met certain conditions. But your money is to actually help me invest so that I can make more money and give back pay back the debt and interest. Now, is the presence of many financial institutions in Africa a barrier or a bridge to attracting business?
The ease of doing business, in a sense that you cannot use what you don't have, I need to have a business in order to have a car that is needed for collateral. I need to have the money to do a business, get money to buy a house so that I can use it as a collateral. So I think we can put in better systems that will push for more businesses, as Alan Subi was saying, to the local communities where we have what we call the common mwananchi in Kenya, the person at the lowest point, the mama mboga. We could actually put in better systems that will not be what would you say, it will be not taking more from them, but rather helping them grow their businesses, because we do have loans, we do have from the financial institutions, we have different kinds of financial institutions providing loans to them, but they are termed as nyonya damu, I think, or something. That means they're sucking blood. That means they're taking a lot from the common people than actually what they're gaining.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Noreen, for that take. Absolutely. Looking onto Africa being again an agricultural economy, we are going to go on to that. Alan Subi, what is your take when it comes to financial institutions in Africa and how they could be supportive or an hindrance to economic growth and easy of attracting businesses in Africa?
Austin, microfinance institutions have a provision for business people that do not have collateral to save in groups. They're called group loans. Each group member guarantees the other who's getting money. But first, you form a group, you start saving, you save daily or weekly, and very little money. It's to encourage them to develop a saving culture. And once the group savings are enough, the bank will top up to then offer group members loans, short-term loans, but even then they are tasked to pay back every week. First of all, they have to meet every week. And then when they meet, let's say Thursday, then you bring, if you have a running loan, you bring your weekly payment during the meeting. And I think that's a brilliant program. I know that many microfinance institutions here in Uganda are running such a program. One, it helps them save. Two, the grassroots businesses are progressing because of these small short-term loans, and then they keep progressing. If you've borrowed 500,000 and you've run the loan for 6 months, the next time you're borrowing, they'll up it to 700, then 1 million, then 2 million before you know it. So I think they are actually empowering and they're enabling a stable and a good business environment here in Uganda. And the reason they may have the bigger financial institutions may have reservations is because as an African people, we are not paying back loans. Austin, you know I'm right. We don't have a culture of paying back loans. You realize that financial institutions invest so much in having loan payment departments. Why? Why? Because we are not paying back loans. That's why institutions are trying so much to save themselves. They are asking you for a whole list of things so that their stance is saved, so that they're not writing off loans every year. They're not declaring bad debts every year. So I wouldn't blame them, but then I would encourage smaller businessmen to get into microfinance institutions, because those ones they have good products for them. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now I'm looking again onto the comparison. When you speak of the ease of doing business, my dear Noreen and my dear Alan, in Africa, we're looking onto factors such as how many days does it take to register a property? How many days does it take to get electricity? How many days does it take to start a business? How days doing business, the world ranks for Mauritius, which is the first one in Africa, is number 32 in the world. Number 32 in the world is now falling into Africa. Now, regulatory environment, macroeconomic stability, and Alan Subi, this year Tanzania and Uganda is the election year, isn't it? Is it the election year in
Yes,
Uganda as well?
we're calling it election year, though the elections are happening in Jan.
In Jan, okay, fantastic. Now, my Minister of Finance this week also read the budget for the country, and I was, to be very honest, saddened when he called the budget electoral budget. It's like a lot of focus is going to focus on to ensuring that the election is successful per se. Now, I'm thinking, and this is why Wake Up Africa is, when it comes to the ease of doing business and the issues of regulatory, the word that is giving Noreen tongue twists, regulatory frameworks in Africa. When you have a whole year to run the country, and the focus for the budget for that year is election, are we really making positive strides as the continent when it comes to substantiating? Noreen earlier on said, we have long-term visions. We have 2063 for Africa. Tanzania is doing 2050. Okay. But we have to have a vision that really pins us down year in, year out. Now, when the whole budget of the countries is directed towards focusing on one component, which is critical, of course, elections are critical, but are we there yet as the continent to really say, let our focus be on election this year, and then we'll think of other things next time. Are we really attracting investment through that? Alan, to start with, and Noreen, you'll give your contribution.
Austin, in the developed world, candidates appeal to the general public and to the business fraternity. They reach out for funding, right? I'm sure you received some request for funding for the Obama campaign and whatnot.
Well, Musk and Trump, Noreen will say something about that.
Austin, what happens here? What happens here is, especially the ruling party, will look at financing the campaigns using the budget. And I'm surprised that your Minister of Finance outrightly said it. We know that even calling it election year is because so much is determined by the outcome of the elections. We are making so many moves based on the fact that this is an election year, a campaign year. But we have had the EPS system that has been rethought, has been recalled by the Ministry of Transport. It was being fronted as a safety measure. You know, we are supposed to be driving at 30 kilometers per hour during, I don't know if you've heard of it, in the city center and on highways. And on highways, we're not supposed to go past. Yes, we're not supposed to go past 60. Now, it was implemented today, Saturday. There's been talk of it coming, you know, we've been briefed and all. Then it starts last week. And there are cameras in place, and the fines are hefty. On a single day, a taxi driver has gotten fines worth 2 million Uganda shillings. Okay? So there's been an uproar, there's been a social media protest, and this week, Thursday, was it Thursday or Wednesday, the government had to recall it and say, you know, we apologize, we're going to rethink it. But that also happens because people in the ministry leaked documentation to show the financial projections of the system. What am I saying? The government is putting some measures in place to protect its financial stand going into campaigns. And they're looking for the common man to fund the campaigns. Why would a taxi driver get fined 2 million shillings on day one of implementation of this system? They are looking at us to finance the campaign. And that's where we're getting it all wrong. Because if the government, the ruling party, or other, political candidates reached out, they did their projections and reached out to some businessmen, some NGOs, I don't know what, asking for funding. I think some apolitical organizations would be willing to, for security and whatnot, they would be willing to put aside some money. But if you're thinking on how to get the general public to finance a campaign in such stringent measures, this is wrong. And I'm happy that our our protest got their attention and they recalled it. But yeah, that's where we're getting it all wrong. The mere reading of budgets and allocating more than 50 of the budget to foreign aid is wrong. It's so wrong. We're getting compromised. We are getting, we are having all these sorts of, this is not the platform for them, but we are being exposed to all sorts of moral decadence from the people that we are getting foreign aid from, because we are extremely dependent on, our economy is extremely dependent on their foreign aid. Very wrong, Austin.
Wow. So when I've always compared development and progress in any given economy to the speed or the amount of time people take on traffic. Okay. And they correlate so
You know,
much
right?
because yesterday when we were going to the airport, there was a lady who was complaining over the phone. I heard her that, a 1 kilometer distance can take you an hour. And I'm thinking if 1 kilometer takes an hour in traffic, if that period was conducive, what would you have done in an hour? Now, when you spend an hour in traffic, that means you've taken 1 hour of production time of your schedule for the day.
Exactly.
Now, I'm looking onto a country that I truly love, and you all know you know for a fact that I love Uganda. Already the roads with potholes, already with now that crazy speed limit. If for you to be in the office at 7, would you have to start the day by midnight?
I know, right?
Wow.
So you don't get fined. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't this going to attract more corruption because people will have to buy their way through, not their way in, their way through?
The way this was structured is they have put cameras everywhere. So you're getting your fine on your mobile phone, on your email, because the cameras have seen your registration number, and they have worked out how much fine needs to come to you. Yeah.
I rest my case. I think, countries like China, which we really need to learn from, have advanced so far when they decided to separate the government from politics. So the only one time you hear Chinese politics is the election year. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the government. This is amazing. I think it's a lesson that African states really ought to learn because you're absolutely right. Why should we, look onto the taxes to finance elections, etc., etc., etc. So thank you for bringing that up. As we are drawing closer to the end of Wake Up Africa this morning, Noreen, starting with you, the ease of doing business in Africa, regulatory framework, trade facilitation, infrastructure, trade registration, shock exposure and vulnerability to economy, to trade, to investment. When we speak of fiscal balance and inflation, when we speak of stronger property rights, simpler regulations, etc., what would your parting remarks be to Africa on Wake Up Africa this Saturday, the 14th of June, 2025, as we're discussing the ease of doing business in Africa?
In as much as I have spoken of a lot of negative things about our continent, yeah. But we are supposed to realize that we are a very rich continent. Speaking of what you had said earlier, we have labor, and now we're talking about a growing youth population. Uh, a growing youth population, that means they are also very much into the tech systems. They're more aware of the technology. I think this is something that we can use as a country to know how we're going to use their potential, their technological potential, their strength as youth to develop our business world, creating more opportunities, creating more businesses, advancing our businesses. We understand that there's always a gap of funding, but as Alan Subi has said earlier, that we have the microfinancing, we have different companies having CSR set apart. I think there's a way the government could create a system that's part of the CSR goes into developing our businesses.
Right. Thank you so much, Noreen. Alan Subi, your parting remarks on the ease of doing business in Africa as we are drawing closer to the end of Wake Up Africa this Saturday morning.
On the ease of doing business, I want to applaud the government for the measures that have been taken, empowering us to formalize our businesses and reducing on the cost of registration. On that front, I want to applaud them. Now, how do we get more businesses to be formalized? How do we get more youth involved in business? How do we get them to think job creation as opposed to job seeking? We need to do more. We need to do more when it comes to the revenue authorities' engagements with the small businesses. We need to provide tax holidays not only to the big foreign investors, but also to the mushrooming businesses. We need to work towards creating a more conducive environment for small businesses and be equal partners interested in their growth. That needs to be evident in our taxation policies and other forms of support. We need to be seen to provide more funding options to businesses, because we know that funding is such a big issue when it comes to small businesses. We need to be bringing on board investors interested in funding these small businesses, as opposed to being interested in taking taxes from the little that businesses make. Government parastatals and ministries need to be keen on these conversations, on these discussions for the betterment of our business environment. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you so much. And for me, really, is to thank you always for making time for Wake Up Africa. It is mesmerizing. Next week, we are going to speak on the pertinent issue on taxes. Most African governments depend on taxes to make their ends meet. But again, it's taxes eat, really, when it comes to development. The issues you've raised, Alan, went with the fines and everything. Now, those are to finance elections. So after elections, are they going to bring back the old system? Is this transformative? Is this really communicating? Is this the way out? So this is what we're going to discuss next Saturday, and I really look forward to having this discussion with you, my very own economist, my very own socialist, capitalist. You ladies are very amazing, and I look so much forward to having this discussion with you. Once again, thank you so much. In my conclusion, while some African countries are making strides in improving their business environments, challenges remain. Macroeconomic stability, infrastructure development, and efficient trade facilitation are crucial for fostering a more conducive business climate across the continent. So once again, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Noreen. Up until next week, I wish you all a fantastic weekend and the week ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
Let's make Africa the better place, because this is the only place we call home. Up until next week, I'm your host, Austin Makani. Thank you for watching Wake Up Africa. See you again next week.